This is Rabbi Kifa, and welcome to another edition of the Lion's Den. Today's lecture is, today's discussion is going to be about the Hidden Truth Hebraic Scrolls. And the author of the Hidden Truth Hebraic Scrolls just so happened, the transliterator of the Hebrew Scrolls, Hidden Truth Hebraic Scrolls, just so happened to be here in San Antonio. And another segment in the Lion's Den here is, again, is my teacher and esteemed Hakohin Rabbi Simon Altaf. And we'd like to welcome you again to another edition of the Lion's Den, Rabbi Simon.
Thank you for that, Rabbi Kifa. Thank you.
So the question going forward, Mishpahar, and this is an important question I'd like to ask you, Rabbi Simon, is, you know, with all the translations out there, transliterations out there, what's the purpose in having another translated Bible?
Right. I mean, we need to understand the history of Rabbi Kifa first, of why we need to do another translation. I mean, first of all, if we look back at our history, I mean, the only Bible that people know out there, in majority, other than the Jewish Publication Society's one, is the King James Version. That seems to be the, you know, the de facto Bible out there that most people wanted to have. And that, as you know, wasn't translated till what, you know, the late 16th, 17th century. And we also understand that none of these Bibles that have been translated, even the so-called Jewish Bibles out there, not a single one has been translated by a Levite, a Kohen. Not a single one out there. So for 2,000 years, our people haven't had a Bible actually written, translated into another language by a Kohen. So yes, the Hebrew was written by Sopharim long ago, and that was preserved, you know, as you can see the Masoretic text, you know, that was preserved for many generations. But who actually, you know, that Masoretic text that most people don't realize was preserved by the Khazarian people, those, you know, so-called people that today call themselves the chosen, you know, children of Israel, which they are not. So it was preserved by, actually the first translations were made by them. They're the ones who did the pointing of the Hebrew scrolls, because we didn't have pointings in our scrolls. And for that, you can go back to the Arabic, you know, 7th century Arabic, 6th century Arabic, and you can find that the Arabic, classical Arabic, also didn't have no pointing. It kind of followed a Semitic line and rule, similar to that. That's why some of the words were preserved. So the reason why the translation was needed was primarily back in 2007, when this translation was going to be done, 2007, 2008 time period, was that I wanted to have a translation that I could use, you know, with my copyright license on it, so that I could get it translated into the foreign languages. In other words, the original aim wasn't English translation. English obviously became a translation from the Hebrew, simply because that would be the go-between language for, say, an Urdu translation of the Torah or a Hindi translation of the Torah, because I needed a translation to reach out to the East, and I didn't have one. So I went to one particular rabbi, you know, at the time, who had a translation, and I asked him if I would get the copyrights to that particular translation, and he didn't give them to me. So I thought, okay. So then one of my students, he asked me, he said, Rabbi, you know, why do you need to go to him? You can translate it yourself. You have the language abilities, you speak all these languages, you know, you can translate it yourself. You don't need any of these people. So then I thought, okay, point well taken. So I put it before the Most High, put it before Hashem, you know, and asked, you know, should I translate this? Because, you know, you have to have God behind you to translate something.
Indeed.
So I did. So that was the driver that then I noticed the translation, the Hebrew roots, there were several Hebrew roots Bibles out there at the time in 2007. So when I looked at the Hebrew roots Bibles in that time period, I found that the mistakes were still there. When I looked at the Hebrew and did the comparison with the Greek ones out there, you know, the Septuagint, and I looked at the Aramaic as well, and so I found that the Hebrew translation wasn't clean. There were still errors in there. There were errors in the KJV, translated by 44 scholars. There were errors in pretty much every Bible that's out there, had errors in it. So then I decided that this needs to change, because the story doesn't line up in many places. Because you know how it is, you know, you have all these channels out there propagating certain kind of truth, and then when you trying to line it up with the scrolls, with the scriptures, they don't happen to line up.
Yeah.
So I decided that I needed to do something about it. So at that point, God put it into my spirit that you're going to do the translation now. You're going to change this.
And this was 2007.
This was to the end of 2007. So 2008 was the beginning time period when I said, okay, now in anger I'm going to translate it, the whole thing. So it was a massive project for myself. So I started translating it, and then I took the help of, believe it or not, there was a few women who actually helped me to do the editing, like the reading, proofreading of it, grammatical errors and stuff like that. That was the beginning of the Bible that was then called Abrahamic Faith, Netzarim Hebraic Study Scrolls or Scriptures, and then we switched the name over when it became the third or fourth edition, I believe it was. Between third and fourth editions, we translated the name to Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls, because by that time it had gone through about nearly 4 revisions, and the 4th revision was actually very, very important, because I had kind of cleaned it up completely. So I was sitting there year after year after year, cleaning up the first revision, the second revision, the third revision. My practically last seven years now.
So when you say clean up, can you explain to the people what you mean by cleaning it up?
Well, for instance, the word Elohim, in the Bible should really be translated as powers, plural. And so, they put it in the Hebrew as Elohim, and then they leave it in Hebrew as Elohim. So you can do that, but however, when you translate it, it doesn't translate to just God. You see, in the English you will translate it to God.
Right.
That don't make sense, because Elohim means powers in the plural. So God, the way God is, you see, when we use the term God, it doesn't always do justice in the heavens, because God is not like you and me. God is a different kind of a being altogether. So the way God operates is totally different as well. So what we have to do then, we have to explain to the people is that these are the terminologies and what they mean, what they represent. Same for God. We have to put, instead of God, we have to put power, singular. So Eloha is a singular power, therefore this is also important.
Yeah, understand.
And that's just one cleanup, and there are several other cleanups. For instance, in Genesis chapter 1, what happened in Genesis chapter 1? That sets the stage of all the story. What happened in Genesis chapter 2? What happened in Genesis chapter 3? What happened in 4? There's a lot of cleanup that took place in just those 4 chapters. And then you now multiply that all the way throughout the whole of the scriptures.
Right.
Okay, to me, the scriptures are up to Tanakh, but then you also have the Christian Bible, which is the New Testament, that also needed cleanup. So therefore, in order to correct people, that they don't formulate wrong theologies, then the correction needed to be done in this particular way. And this was, as far as I know, to date, no other Kohen has translated the Bible yet. So until a Kohen from the Beit Zadok does it, then I'll say, yes, there's another one done. However, I will put this out. The Arabic translation of the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls has been done by another Kohen, who is an Arabic speaker. So he helped translate the New Testament portion of it into Arabic. Now he's also working on the Torah portion as well, which is not yet complete. So yes, another Kohen from the house of Zadok is working on the Arabic side.
Okay, well, before we go any further, let's clean up the Kohen business. Now everybody's running around here calling themselves priests. What do you mean by priests? I mean, because I hear it all the time. I turn on the YouTube and everybody's the priest. Oh, I'm a priest. I'm a high priest. I'm a priest.
Well, so what the people need to understand is that a priest is, if you really, we're not talking about a Roman Catholic priest or a Christian priest. We are talking about a priest in terms of a Kohen or a Kahin. A Kahin was a priest that was established by birth through the God of Israel. And this was given as a priesthood forever. It wasn't meant to just disappear, finish, Of course, we lost the temples. We kind of like, we came from the tabernacle, the tent of meetings, to our 2 temples. So when those temples went, the priesthood gradually disappeared from the scene, didn't die. You know, priests didn't just die away and disappear. They gradually disappeared from the scene because they were no longer needed in the temple services. So after, for instance, 70 CE, the priests were gone into different directions. And my family, as a priesthood family, was in Iran. You know, so they stayed in Iran. They never came back in Ezra's time to Israel. They stayed in Iran. So this is why my family line was preserved in Iran, in then India, and then Pakistan, and then back to England. And here I am from England. So therefore, what people don't seem to understand is you can't just willy-nilly just go around calling yourself a priest. Where is your genealogy? I mean, I have a genealogy, which my father, you know, keeps. My family keeps a genealogy. So therefore, we know who we are. Now, for us, that's a top secret. You know, we don't just dish out our genealogies. We keep it very, very safe because, you know, it's something that we don't like to talk about because it's not something that you can advertise. Now, the thing about other people who claim to be a Kohen, well, there are several issues. Number one, if you're a Kohen, you must have a genealogy tracing you back to your exile or to wherever you came from, Israel. So if you can trace your genealogy back to your exile, like you said, I'm in Iran, or I'm in Iraq, or I was in India, or some other country, then yeah, trace it back. Trace back your genealogy. So if you can trace your genealogy back, then you have a valid genealogy to be a Kohen. Now, all Levites are Kohen, but you see, all Levites are not Kohen, whereas all Kohanim are Levites. So all Levites, some of them might be Kohen, some of them might not be Kohen. So there is another distinction within that. Now, what we find is that a lot of these people out there, the so-called wayward Hebrew groups that are out there, some of them even call themselves high priest. Well, what do you mean by high priest? There's no temple. A high priest would be for a temple in Israel. So until a temple is there, there's no need for a high priest anywhere else. Now, you can be a priest provided you are genealogically a priest. Most of the people in America that claim to be Kohen are not Kohen because they were brought here in slavery, in exile. So they were brought in slave ships or by some other method. So therefore they cannot be Kohen. This is precisely the reason what most people don't understand is that no Kohen in our history were ever slaves. We were the only people in history that is written and known that were exempt from slavery. We were able to move freely, even in Egypt when our people were in slavery in the first Exodus. Only people free were the Kohanim. They were able to move in and out of Egypt, no problem. And you see that in the book of Exodus, where you see that Aaron goes to meet his brother Moses. Well, how can he go to meet his brother Moses if he's in slavery? He can't even take a day off.
Right. If he's laying bricks.
Right.
Indeed.
So this is why a lot of the groups that go around calling themselves Kohanim or Kohen are just using a title. They don't even know what it means. Because a Kohen has certain duties. First duty, he has to take the people back into the Torah. You know, he's supposed to clean up the act of the people. He is supposed to lead the people into Torah. Well, how many of these so-called groups are leading the people into Torah? I don't see that happening. They are rejecting the festivals of the Most High.
Indeed.
So that's the issue.
I understand. Hope that kind of cleared things up for you. You're hearing it from a priest, so this will kind of clear things up and probably help a lot of you who are running around here calling yourself so-called priest. I highly would advise you not to do so. Because like Rabbi Simon has said, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with the priesthood, and you don't want to you don't want to make any kind of false claimers over yourself. So steer clear.
Then I'll ask the second question: how many of you had the privilege to go establish a synagogue in a Muslim nation? If you're a Kohen, can anybody tell me? You know, I ask the people, like, what have you done for Torah? Nothing. Nothing. They haven't even got off their backsides to get out of their state where they live. So I can say for myself, I established a synagogue in Pakistan. How many people did that? You know, in a hostile nation where, you know, people get killed over just, you know, a different religious system.
Right.
But, you know, that's something that I did. I was asked to do that, and I did it. So therefore, my how do you say, reputation follows me wherever I go. So God, in other words, wherever the Kohen is, God dwells there. So if God dwells there, then he has a protection of God.
Right.
Well, most of these people can't even get out of their states.
Right.
So where's the protection?
Or don't even have passports.
Right.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed. Indeed. Very well said.
So that's basically where we are with the scheme of things. So I think that a lot of people, they love the title Kohen. I didn't use the Kohen title for myself for a long time. I didn't use it because one, I wanted to be 100% certain that I was going to use it if I am one. Two, it required an immense amount of responsibility.
Indeed.
And so therefore I kept shy of using the title until I met with my father one day, and I spoke to him about our genealogy and who we are as a people and where we came from. That's when I knew that who we are as a people. Then I was established. It wasn't just a guesswork in my head. So when I knew, and then I said, okay, now is the time to say, because now that I'm going to translate the scrolls, now it's time to say what's what. Because the other thing is that there's a lot of distorted history out there. So what the Hidden Truths Hebraic scrolls did, it corrected the distorted history. Who are the real children of Israel? Are these people out of Khazaria? Are these people out of China? Are these people out of India? Who are they and where are they today? So a lot of that distorted history needed to be corrected to give people their identity back. Because one of the things that Prophet Daniel has said in the book of Daniel was that knowledge shall increase. And a lot of Christian pastors mistook that to mean, we're going to have more, technology and this, that, and the other. No, because that knowledge that Prophet Daniel was speaking about was a knowledge of who we are as a people. We will know. But who's going to guide you? A Kohen's responsibility is that to guide you.
Indeed. Indeed. Indeed.
Not for the Torah. So this is where this is kind of like not just a pet project of mine, because it's not like one day I got up from my bed and decided let me translate another Bible for people out there. That wasn't the case. For me, this is serious business, and when it's serious business, then because you can put a lot of people wrong if you are wrong yourself, but you can put a lot of people right if you are guided by the Most High. So what is important is a guidance. So as you have seen that we've gone through a progression and a development, and we'd have to turn around the ship of the wayward Hebrews to the right direction, because over here he was facing the wrong direction.
Indeed. Right. Right.
And also, if you can tell them about the prisons that we've been dealing with, how we've been helping establishing prisons.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have a prison ministry here, to where we send the scrolls into. My goodness, I think the count is over 13 different prison institutions all around the United States of America, and the correspondence that we get is overwhelming, to where it comes to a point to where we don't really have enough to go around. Number one, the resources are low because Israel doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And I think it's very important for us to understand is that, now that we have a Kohen, is that we really go back and begin to live in the ancient ways and the ancient paths and do what our forefathers used to do back in the ancient times and the forever times, the times that were established in the beginnings. And so with the funds that do come in, many scrolls have been sent. The count is over 350 Hidden Truth Hebraic scrolls have gone into prisons around the world, roughly 350, and the number is still growing. So I give thanks for everyone who has supported the Ministry of African Israel, because it is a ministry that is, I firmly believe, is at the tip of the spear in doing the work of the Most High, and in this latter age waking our people up and bringing them back to the Torah, to repentance, and going back and to begin to execute and live in the ancient ways of our forefathers.
To us, Rabbi Kifa, is not the quantity, like people say, I've sent 3 million Bibles out. But so what if you send 3 million Bibles out if they all got the same errors?
Right.
So you send 3 million errors out. Now if you've got 300 Bibles out with least number of errors, then you have actually made those people in those countries knowledgeable of things they should have known long ago. So in other words, we've helped to establish in many different countries the correct understanding of Scripture, the correct understanding of Torah, the correct understanding of theology. And we're not talking about one country, we're talking about several countries. You know, start from North America, England, Germany, France, Pakistan, India, China, you know, Latin America, all over the place, Singapore, you know, places that you've never heard of is where the scrolls have gone. And the people have got the correct understanding, which means that they will pass that understanding with one scroll to many other people as a congregation. So this, I think, is paramount, is at the end of days, what God is doing is God is establishing His people everywhere. He's waking them up by His Spirit and is establishing them and is trying to restore them back in spirit back to their heritage, which is the most important thing. This is where the hidden truths of Hebraic scrolls is a gem in its own. It's a gold dust. You know, it's people are crying for it. Send it to us. Send it to us. And you know how we found that in Africa, some unrighteous people were taking the scrolls and they were selling it, and they were ending up to the right hands of the people, you know, the correct people,
Right.
because they were actually ended up buying them from the bookshops.
Right.
So we found that as well. So therefore, there are several issues that we dealt with. At least I personally dealt with. You know, going through the, as I said, the issues with Genesis 18, Genesis 48, Genesis 38, for instance, where one example where you see that in the King James Version Bible, it says that, talks about Judah, where Judah has relationships with Tamar, his daughter-in-law, and then it says in the King James Version that he no longer saw after that, which is actually an incorrect translation of Genesis 38 verses 26. Whereas, you know, the Hebrew words Velo Isaf or Le'adata basically should mean he never ceased from having a relationship. Whereas the actual translation in the KJV or the other translations that are out there make it sound like he stopped having a relationship with her after that completely. But the Hebrew says otherwise. So what we find from there is that this is how people are misled into believing things which are not true. And that's just one example. Then we go on from there to Isaiah 7:14, you know, about the virgin birth. You know, we then go to Isaiah 9:6 about mighty God, and Isaiah 53, you know, is this about the Messiah or what? You know, so it kind of continues all the way down. Ezekiel 44, you know, all of these translations contain errors out there. So until you pick one up, until you pick a Bible and you put it to the test, you know, this is a hidden truth of Hebraic scrolls. You pick it, you read it, you put it to the test, and you're going to say, this is the difference of this scroll is night and day with any other scroll out there. I challenge anybody out there to prove it otherwise. It's night and day. You know, when you pick this scroll, your life's going to totally change. You're going to have a life paradigm shift, not just a paradigm shift, a complete life paradigm shift. You're going to have to stop believing the garbage that churches have fed you for donkeys of years, even synagogues for that matter.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to then start to receive the correct knowledge, which can only come to the Kohanim, who are meant to be the custodians and guardians of the Torah.
Right.
So I think this is the paramount thing, detail that people need to understand.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Simon, for your understanding on the hidden truth of Hebraic scrolls, and the reason and rationale why you all need to have them, and all of you. I mean, even if you may have questions of whether you're a Hebrew or not, it doesn't matter. You see, because the God of Israel will accept a Martian if he comes from Mars and willing to take the yoke of Torah upon him and submit to the government of the Most High. So it's not about color, but it's about Hebrew character. It's about the Hebrew traits. Do you line up with this book? That's the whole thing. Many people say, well, I've read the Bible 17 times through. But what has it done for your life? Like Rabbi Simon said, is it changing your life? Are you actually living by this? Is it a lifestyle, or is it just a one day out of the week thing, and then the rest of the time you can just do whatever you want? So don't look at it that way. And really, it's a great investment that you all need to have in your libraries. Rabbi Simon, anything you would like to say in closing?
Well, I like to say that, you know, we initially when we started to publish this, we had real difficulty publishing them because we had to publish them from different publishers. They were so thick. So now that by the grace of, you know, mercy and favor of God, you know, now we have Amazon that publish them for us, in paperback, and they're also published at Lulu, so they are readily available. Just a computer, just go on your computers, go to Amazon, on online books, and just type in Hidden Truths of Hebraic Scrolls. You're going to have a whole host of them. You got the Torah, you got the Tanakh, you got the complete Bible, all 66 books. So it's not like, they're like a million miles away. And Amazon can deliver to any corner of the world. So they are out there. I think it is high time for our people to restore back to the ancient paths. Just as Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 16 said, look back intently at the ancient paths. That is where you're going to find rest for your souls. Otherwise you're going to have restless souls for the remainder of your lives. From one religion to another, and you're not going to find rest. So I'll leave it with that.
Well, to Darabah, Rebbe Simon, and Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.